As Hillary Clinton dominates the Democratic Party primary fight, the Republican establishment turns on its frontrunner, Donald Trump. Presidential historian Craig Shirley is here to analyze and handicap the coming contests. And later, a House panel investigates the ethical implications of using fetal tissue and organs for research. Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy will share their findings. And finally, can the state force Catholic priests to reveal what they hear in confession? Father Jeff BEYHE is here to discuss his case and the court ruling. The World Over Live begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Craig Shirley, Congressman Sean Duffy, and Father Jeff BEYHE are all straight ahead. And I have a special reveal for you a little later, so call the kiddies in. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, or if you have a question, I'll be live tweeting throughout. Find me on Twitter at Raymond Arroyo. Or you can email me at worldover@EWTN.com. Let's get to it. And boy, do we have a lot to get to. Here's the brief news from the world over this week. As Hillary Clinton appears to be on her way to the Democratic nomination, the Justice Department has granted immunity to a former State Department staffer who worked on Hillary Clinton's private email server. According to a senior law enforcement official, the FBI has secured the cooperation of Brian Pagliano, who worked on Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign before setting up the server in her New York home in 2009. The immunity was granted as part of a criminal investigation into the possible mishandling of classified information. To date, there is no indication that prosecutors have convened a grand jury in the email investigation. And the Supreme Court appears sharply divided over Texas abortion clinic regulations in its biggest abortion case in nearly a quarter century. The court's liberals and conservatives signaled little common ground during the nearly 90 minutes of oral arguments on Wednesday. The Texas law requires doctors who perform abortions to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals, and clinics must meet hospital-like standards for outpatient surgery. The clinics say the real purpose of the regulations is to reduce access to abortion. Supporters claim the regs are needed to protect the health of women. Justice Anthony Kennedy holds the key to whether the court splits 4-4. That result could leave the regulations stand, but would not settle the issue nationally. If Kennedy were to side with his 4 more liberal colleagues, the regulations would be struck down. And a partial ceasefire in Syria has, for the most part, held this week. Humanitarian aid has been quickly dispersed to areas in desperate need. Russia claims to have delivered more than 500 tons of food since it began airstrikes in support of Syria's government last September. The truce does not include areas where the Islamic State's group or al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria are present. The next round of peace talks would resume in Geneva on March 9th. And in a message delivered to thousands of faithful at his weekly general audience, the Pope told some church benefactors that the church doesn't want your blood money if it comes from exploiting workers. The Pope went on to say that the path of true conversion is not the one of ritual sacrifices, but rather of justice. Pope Francis urges wealthy individuals who exploit their workers, quote, "Please take back your checks and burn them. The people of God and the church don't need dirty money. They need hearts that are open to the mercy of God," end quote. And for the first time since the Synod of the Family, the Vatican's top doctrinal official has affirmed the Church's long-standing teaching on communion for divorced and remarried Catholics. Namely, those who are remarried without an annulment cannot approach the sacrament. In multiple interviews, Cardinal Gerhard Müller, the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, reminded the faithful that only chaste divorcees may receive the Eucharist. He stressed that the indissolubility of the marital bond is a dogma and that there cannot be a second marriage. The comments appear to put to rest any speculation that Pope Francis would or could make any changes to the hotly debated topic at last year's synod. The Holy Father is expected to deliver his final thoughts on the synod on March 19th. Stay tuned for that. Also at the Vatican, Cardinal George Pell, Pope Francis's top financial advisor, testified for the fourth and final day before an Australian government task force investigating clerical sex abuse. Connected by video link from Rome, the government panel accused Pell of not doing more to stop the abuse of a minor by a priest back in the 1970s. At one point, Cardinal Pell was asked why, back in the 1970s, when he was a junior priest, did he fail to stop alleged abuse by a Christian brother teacher, when a student told him that the teacher was misbehaving with classmates. Cardinal Pell rejected the assertion, claiming that he couldn't have stopped the abuse from continuing.
Overstatement. I did take the opportunity to ascertain the reliability of the rumors. I was told there was something in them and that it was being dealt with.
Pell also said that the Catholic Church has made enormous mistakes in dealing with the sex abuse scandal, and he wasn't going to, quote, defend the indefensible. And the president at Mount St. Mary's University, America's second oldest Catholic school, located just outside of Baltimore, resigned Monday after he made controversial statements about struggling freshman students. He also was accused of retaliatory firings. Back in January, the student newspaper first reported that first-year president Simon Newman told faculty and staff that to improve the college's ratings, struggling freshmen should be removed. He said, quote, "This is hard for you because you think of the students as cuddly bunnies, but you can't. You just have to drown the bunnies." He added, "Put a Glock to their heads." After the article was published, Newman fired the faculty advisor to the student paper, as well as a professor who opposed his plan. The faculty voted 87-3 to have the president removed. Well, at least one freshman was put out of his misery. Now for a little more good news. On March 8th, my new middle grade adventure series, Will Wilder, The Relic of Perilous Falls, crashes into bookstores everywhere. Now gather the kids. Here's a look at the brand new trailer. Watch this.
He alone can see them, the dark things we ignore. 12-year-old Will Wilder sought a relic with rare powers. Now, he has awoken an ancient evil, and the only way to save the town of Perilous Falls is to embrace his destiny before it's too late. So long as he isn't grounded at the time. Chip Flaherty calls it a pulse-pounding page-turner. Think Indiana Jones meets Percy Jackson. Dean Koontz raves great fun and great frights. The search for the next epic must-read adventure series is over. Will Wilder, The Relic of Perilous Falls by Raymond Arroyo. Premiering March 8th from Random House Kids.
The first book of the Will Wilder series hits bookstores March 8th. But you can order the hardcover or the audiobook now at the EWTN Religious Catalog, Books A Million, Amazon, wherever books are sold. And if you pre-order and send me your contact info at raymond@raymondarroyo.com, I'll send you a limited edition autographed bookmark. So get out there. And I'm about to hit the road for the Will Wilder book tour, signing books, talking to kids, and I hope you'll come see me. The kickoff event is on March 8th in Jacksonville, Florida, at the Barnes & Noble on the Midtown Parkway at 7 p.m. Then Saturday, March 12th, it's on to Corpus Christi. I'll be at Half Price Books on South Padre Island Drive at 1 p.m. Then on Sunday, March 13th, I'm going home to New Orleans for a visit to Octavia Books uptown at 1 p.m. Then it's on to Milwaukee, Orlando, Florida, Cleveland, Ohio, Athens, Georgia, many more. I'm so excited to see you all and to share Will's saga with you. Go to RaymondArroyo.com. All the tour dates and times are there. And get ready for one wilder adventure. When we return, talking about wilder adventures, Donald Trump swept the GOP Super Tuesday contests, and not everyone is happy about it. Is there room for Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio to stop Trump's momentum? Or will the Never Trump movement backfire? Craig Shirley joins me to discuss when the World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. After his Super Tuesday wins, Donald Trump continues to lead in the polls, but not all Republicans are buying those red baseball caps. Mitt Romney, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and others are piling on Trump this week. Is there a way to stop his rise? Joining me to discuss this and much more is public affairs consultant, presidential historian, and author of The Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Craig Shirley, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Raymond.
Pleasure to see you. I have to play this sound for you to begin. This is Mitt Romney going on the attack. Let's face it, this is not Mitt's strong suit. I mean, he is a gentleman. It's let's roll it and we can talk.
Here's what I know. Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud. His promises are as worthless as a degree from Trump University. He's playing the members of the American public for suckers. He gets a free ride to the White House, and all we get is a lousy hat. His domestic policies would lead to recession. His foreign policies would make America and the world less safe. He has neither the temperament nor the judgment to be president.
Is that effective, Craig Shirley?
No, it's not. First of all, Mitt Romney's not been very effective ever being on the attack. It comes across as Sylvester the cat, quite honestly. Second of all, is that he's missing the point. He says Donald Trump represents a force in American politics, represents a populist, anti-establishment force, and he's talking about Trump University and hats and things like that, and it doesn't resonate with most people.
Here's my question. Does this help the Republican Party, having the establishment, first of all, train all of its guns on the front runner?
Right.
Doesn't this damage whoever the nominee is?
No, it does just the opposite. You know, this reminds me of 1980 with Reagan, is that the establishment, the Republican establishment, the media establishment, academia, was always against Ronald Reagan. They always made fun of Ronald Reagan. And as in 1980, as he was headed toward the nomination, they go into a full-throated panic. They say, we have to break the emergency glass. We have to pull Gerald Ford out of retirement, get him into the race. And Henry Kissinger went to see him. Dick Cheney went to see him. His old political advisors like Stu Spencer went to see out to California. They wanted to get Ford in the race only to stop Reagan from getting the nomination because they were terrified Reagan would lead the party to another Goldwater-like debacle in 1964. And obviously Reagan won, and it was an historic landslide, and it reframed the debate as far as Republican versus Democrat and conservative versus liberal. But the establishment is always afeared of threats to the establishment, and Donald Trump is a threat to the establishment.
Now, there are reports. I mean, this is almost history mirroring contemporary events. There are reports now, a source telling CNN, that Mitt Romney is considering challenging Trump to block him at the convention should nobody garner the needed delegates. Is this just fantasy talk?
Well, Donald Trump is not Catholic, but tonight he should light a candle and pray that Mitt Romney gets into the race.
Why?
Because it would divide, it would further dilute the anti-Trump vote, just the way that Gerald Ford, I mean, Reagan was begging Gerald Ford to get in the race in 1980 because he knew that Gerald Ford would divide the anti-Reagan vote remaining among George Bush and Howard Baker and other people. This will further divide the anti-Trump vote. Trump is headed right now, all things being equal, to enough delegates for a first ballot nomination.
You think he's going to garner the delegates?
I think that, well, he's headed that way. You know, politics is rarely a straight line projection, but there is an element of Newtonian physics involved, and that is for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. And right now is that politics is also motion. Politics, has a tendency to stay in motion once an object is in motion, and he's in motion.
So you think having Mitt Romney and also today John McCain, the two former and we should say failed Republican nominees for president, come out against Trump actually strengthens Trump's
hand. That's right. Because
drives those working class voters back to him.
That's right. Because, like Nietzsche said, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Well, the more the establishment attacks Donald Trump, the stronger he becomes, and the stronger his anti-establishment message becomes.
I need to roll something for you. This is Marco Rubio also attacking Donald Trump. Watch this.
I will never quit. I will never stop until we keep a con man from taking over the party of Reagan and the conservative movement. He's a con man. He's a con man.
Is this having any effectiveness? I'm sure at the debate we're going to hear more of this con man line.
Marco Rubio is not the proper custodian of Reaganism. Reaganism is more than just about one candidate. Reaganism is about a philosophy, it's about a party, it's about a movement, it's about the American people.
And you think Trump embodies that?
No, they all embody a certain element of Reaganism in some sort of way, which is why nobody calls himself a Bush Republican. Nobody calls himself a Nixon Republican. But a lot of people call themselves Reagan Republicans because they have channeled some portion of Reagan inside of them, but none of them channeled all of Reagan inside of them.
I see. What do you make of this Never Trump social media campaign? And now it seems Mitt Romney is the chairman of the Never Trump forces.
Right.
Is this, I've never seen anything like this, Craig. Certainly in my time covering politics. Have you?
Yes, in 1964.
And who was that?
Goldwater. When the establishment took a walk on Goldwater. Now, Goldwater did not help by reaching out at the convention in San Francisco at the Cow Palace and bringing in Bill Scranton and Jacob Javits and Nelson Rockefeller. He didn't help himself, that's for sure. Reagan was smarter in 1980. He reached out to the establishment elements by picking George H.W. Bush as his running mate and bringing them in and unifying the party. But still, it's a two-way street. And is that right now, if the establishment was smart, instead of denouncing Trump, they'd be reaching out to him. They'd be surrounding him with policy advisors and consultants and other people, issue specialists who try to improve on Trump's message so he has a broader, nicer appeal.
Let's look at the delegate count. I mean, that's what we're really talking about. That's what these people should really be focusing on. Here's the delegate count as it stands now, starting with the Democrats. Hillary Clinton's at 1,054 delegates. Bernie Sanders is at 409. You flip to the Republicans now. Donald Trump, 324 delegates. Ted Cruz, 230. Marco Rubio, 111. Now, there are upcoming contests any day now.
Right.
Here's what Ted Cruz is saying. Listen to this. Tell me if this is effective, if this makes any difference. Roll that.
So long as the field remains divided, Donald Trump's path to the nomination remains more likely. And that would be a disaster for Republicans, for conservatives, and for the nation. And after tonight, we have seen that our campaign is the only campaign that has beaten, that can beat, and that will beat Donald Trump.
Is Ted Cruz the only candidate that can beat Donald Trump? Are you convinced of that argument?
I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have the newspapers of next week. I do know in politics, Raymond, is that the way to beat an idea is with a better idea. And that if Ted Cruz is going to get back into the race, he has to formulate a better message that kind of almost out-Trumps Trump without, channeling Trump. He's got to take it in a new direction, but he's got to do it in a different sort of way so that it is appealing to Trump-like voters who may be having doubts about nominating Donald Trump, but are still frustrated about Washington and the political establishment.
Ted Cruz won Texas. What if Marco Rubio loses Florida to Donald Trump, as he is projected to do at the moment? He's ahead by 16 points.
Well, I would say that certainly that's the end of his presidential campaign. And it may be the end of his political career in Florida, because if he loses Florida to Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump goes on to lose the nomination and lose the election to Hillary Clinton, then what does that say about Marco Rubio's ability as a politician?
I forgot to play this earlier. Donald Trump's response to Mitt Romney. I want your reaction to this. Roll that.
Look, Mitt is a failed candidate. He failed. That was a race, I have to say, folks, that should have been won. That was a race that absolutely should have been won. And I backed Mitt Romney. I backed him. You can see how loyal he is. He was begging for my endorsement. I could have said, Mitt, drop to your knees. He would have dropped to his knees. He was begging. Sure.
Typical Trump. He's staying true to his character. Right. I have my own theory. Why do you think he's allowed by the electorate to say the things he does and get away with it? Whereas other candidates, it doesn't wear well when they start.
Because he's defined the terms of the game. Because he's defined himself long before people started denouncing him for defining the terms. I mean, usually the game is determined by the people who have the possession of the ball on the field, and he has the ball on the field, so he gets to determine the dimensions of it, not the other people. And if you look at it, you know what he said about Mitt Romney is that now he's got everybody laughing at Mitt Romney, which is what he wants.
Yeah. No. And earlier in his talk, he mentioned, look, Romney, not only did he come to me, he was calling me a great businessman before. Now, what happened? It does kind of taint and throw Mitt Romney on the pile of the establishment. And I imagine, again, as you said earlier, that strengthens Donald Trump.
There's a difference between Mitt Romney's loss in 2012, Reagan's loss in '76, and Goldwater's loss in '64. Goldwater and Reagan left legacies upon which to build a movement and build a party. They made voters make an investment in them because they appealed to them philosophically, patriotism, personality, however. But people were committed to Barry Goldwater and committed to a conservative philosophy. People were committed to Ronald Reagan. Nobody left 2012 having voted for Mitt Romney saying, boy, I really want him to run again. There wasn't a hue and cry for him to be a national leader. Nobody said to set up a campaign, set up a political action committee, or set up a blog or a website, or we want you to lead us into the future. Yeah. He lost and he was forgotten.
Yeah, very interesting. He really left no mark.
That's
absolutely.
An interesting insight. Yeah, it's like he walked across the snowfield and there were no prints.
No tracks at all.
No tracks
left.
behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My theory about the whole Trump phenomena. He can say things that are cutting because there was already, for 20 years, an audience expectation that this is the character of Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
So he's fulfilling the wishes of the audience on some level, whether they know it or not.
Right.
He's doing what they saw him do on television. So it makes perfect sense. It's like Don Rickles. Rickles comes in, he insults somebody. Everybody laughs and applauds. If I do it or you do it, they're like, what a jerk that Greg Shirley and Raymond Arroyo are.
Right.
Different game for Trump.
And I think also, I agree with you entirely, but I think also he's saying things that people wish they could say. He's spitting in the eye of the establishment, and people wish that they too had the power and authority to spit in the eye of the establishment.
Speaker Paul Ryan took a broadside at Trump this week, talking about, tried to bring up the racism stuff, the KKK thing that apparently Trump denounced, and then he wouldn't denounce it, and then he went back and said, I remember I did denounce it. And now, on the night of his victory during Super Tuesday, Trump had this to say about the Speaker.
I'm going to get along great with Congress, okay? Paul Ryan, I don't know him well, but I'm sure I'm going to get along great with him. And if I don't, he's going to have to pay a big price, okay?
That's what's known as a brushback pitch.
Okay. I mean, it's tough talk. He's coming out swinging.
Right.
I imagine that reinforces his appeal to those who are already in his base.
Yeah, because he's speaking against the establishment. But also, there's very interesting about that press conference is that number of things. One is, who holds a primetime press conference other than the President of the United States? But I think that he cannily wanted people to start seeing him. And he also was much calmer. He talked more. He was more solicitous. He was more magnanimous. He was more, he threw Ted Cruz
a bone.
A bone. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And also, one other thing, Raymond, is that he stopped using less first-person pronouns and started using more plurals. He started saying more we and us, and he started talking like a president instead of just a presidential candidate.
So if you had to bet today, you'd say he's going to go all the way. He's going to collect needed delegates.
An object in motion has a tendency to stay in motion, and Donald Trump is in motion right now. And the other candidates are not in motion.
Final question, this Never Trump movement, given the push toward this anti-Trump sentiment movement in the Republican Party. Is that a break of that pledge that these folks would support, and they all agreed to support whoever the nominee was?
Right.
Did they break the pledge, and does this open the door to Trump possibly running third party?
I think in his mind, they have broken the pledge because in his mind, the party, the RNC, are somehow behind this attempt to try to stop him or deny him. But is that you got to be careful about what you do in politics, because if he's headed toward Cleveland, toward a first ballot nomination, and through behind the scenes machinations, they deny it from him, he's not going to pick up his ball and go home. He's going to run third party, and he's going to ensure that Hillary Clinton is the next president.
And what a moment. Well, this has been an unbelievable season. Craig Shirley, we hope you come back.
You bet.
Thank you. Craig's latest book, Last Act, The Final Years, An Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan, is available wherever books are sold. Undercover videos, focused the world's attention on the issue of fetal organs being sold for medical research. This week, Congress began investigating the ethics of that research. We'll talk to a member of the House panel. Congressman Sean Duffy is straight ahead when The World Over Live continues. Stay right there. Thanks again, Craig. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. In the wake of the Planned Parenthood video expose controversy last year, a House panel convened this week to look into fetal tissue procurement, the ethical implications of using fetal tissue for biomedical research. Here to tell us about the hearing and give us his take on the 2016 presidential race is a member of the House Select Committee on Investigations, Congressman Sean Duffy. Joins us via satellite from the Congress. Sean, thanks for being here.
Good to see you, Raymond. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start with this hearing. I mean, if you listen to your colleagues, they say the law doesn't allow anyone, a mother or anyone else, to sign away the rights to her baby to be used for research of any sort. So why are we having this investigation at all?
Well, if you look at the industry, which really hasn't been investigated, there's huge profits that are made off of the harvesting and the sale of little baby body parts. And we think it's important that we investigate what's happening in this industry. Americans have a right to know what happens to a little baby's heart or lungs or their head or their legs once they're aborted. And we look at kind of the underbelly of this, what I would say is a pretty dirty business, in that you have, Raymond, a middleman business who embeds a technician inside of an abortion clinic, and that technician goes out into the lobby to a mother and gets them to sign a release so they can take and harvest those body parts for sale. And the person who's getting that release, the technician, is making $35 a specimen. So off one baby, they can make $100, $200, $300 per baby. There is no doubt a profit motive. And the more specimens that the technician gets, the more money they make. And so we think this is ripe, in the first hearing that we did, ripe for a moral conversation. What is the appropriate use of fetal baby body parts? And that's the conversation we had yesterday. The first one on our panel was about the morality of this issue.
But Congressman Duffy, if it's illegal, if it's federally illegal to sell, barter, give away your body parts, your child's body parts in this way, how is it happening in these clinics?
Well, it really hasn't been investigated. And so the Democrat witnesses and the Democrats will tell you there is no profit that's being made. Mm-hmm. But you can't deny the fact, Raymond, that big money is being exchanged. Sometimes there's, a 4, 5, 600% markup on the baby body part. So someone is making money, and just because it's being done doesn't mean there's not a violation of the law. Mm-hmm. And I think one other thing that's kind of unique in the emails that we brought out yesterday, Raymond, they're talking about the shopping list of I want a little baby heart, a little baby lung, I want a little baby head, and they're packaging that in FedEx boxes and overnighting them to the research facility like you're buying a book off of Amazon. This is atrocious and shocking information about what's happening in the sale of these body parts.
Yet, Congressman Duffy, your colleague, I want to play this little clip from the hearing yesterday. Your colleague, Jan Schakowsky, had this to say about Planned Parenthood and this entire procurement operation. Listen.
Today's hearing is not part of a serious investigation into fetal tissue research or anything else. 12 states, 3 congressional committees, and a grand jury in Texas have already investigated and found no evidence that Planned Parenthood is seeking to profit from the sale of fetal tissue. Faced with these facts, the Select Panel should have disbanded. Instead, the chair has embarked on a partisan and dangerous witch hunt.
Congressman Duffy, multiple states have investigated this. Not one of them has found any wrongdoing on the part of Planned Parenthood. What's wrong? What are the states doing wrong?
So, Raymond, this is not an investigation about Planned Parenthood. This is an investigation about the harvesting and the sale and the profits of the trafficking of human baby body parts. And I would just note that Planned Parenthood does less than half of the abortions in America. This is about the industry and the sale of the body parts. So this is not about Planned Parenthood. This is about the industry that comes off those baby parts from those abortion clinics. So, and just also, all the Democrats on their side, they're apologists for the abortion industry. They all get contributions and big money from the abortion industry. So that those kind of statements would be made makes absolute sense. Every day of the week, they're going to apologize for abortions and profits.
There is a history, Congressman Duffy, when you look at what went before the Reagan administration and onward, up until really George W. Bush's administration. This was kind of an acceptable practice, using aborted baby parts for research, medical research. It was considered ethical behavior. What has changed?
Well, I would tell you that I don't think the full industry was known and how much money would be made and what was the societal benefit of the harvest and the sale of baby body parts. We had witnesses yesterday that said this is a compelling government interest and this is about saving lives. But then in the next breath said, and it should be used to help people with taste testing and with cosmetics, which aren't life-saving, Raymond. This is about money. This is about using these little babies for a profit center. What's changed, though, is the fact that the industry has changed and our morals and values have changed. There was a time in our past when some people were viewed as three-fifths. Some people were viewed as less than others under the law. And we can always reevaluate the morality of our country and what decisions our forefathers have made, and were they good or were they bad? And this is our time to look at this industry and how it's working, and is this moral, is this right, and should it continue?
One of your witnesses, Lawrence Goldstein of the University of California at San Diego, he made the case that these fetal tissue parts are going to be wasted. These children are already aborted, and his argument is, why would you allow them to be wasted when they could be used for good? You would say what to that argument?
Well, one of my colleagues made the very good following point, which is, listen, all of us, when we die, Raymond, you could say all of our bodies go to waste. And we should mandate that everyone, once we are deceased, all of our bodies should go to research. I mean, that's the same argument that he's making for aborted babies. So you can always see a value in death and research, but we're a moral people. And I think we should look at the respect of those little babies like we show the respect to our parents and our siblings and our friends who pass away as well. And I think that's a very powerful argument. What is the dignity of the human life and what is the dignity of the human body? And who should be able to make that decision about who can make consent for the use for science of those little baby parts, or, again, a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister?
Congressman Duffy, why not go at this from the appropriation angle? I mean, you all, it seems, are looking at the procurement of this fetal tissue. At the same time, the government, and the House controls the purse strings, the House in which you sit as a member, $76 million a year is funded by the federal government. $76 million going to fetal tissue research. Why not rededicate that money or put restrictions on it to stop this kind of procurement?
Listen, you make a very good point, Raymond, and our committees of jurisdiction and appropriations are looking at that. But I also think you have to make the case to the American people. And, you know, the apologists for this industry can come out and make great arguments saying all of these body parts are going to life-saving treatments, life-saving drugs, and vaccines. And it's pretty hard for Americans to say no to that. But if you actually expose what benefit has come from the research on fetal tissue, and what is the morality behind it, and how does the industry work, and once America knows that, I think they would be more supportive of a House that was to come together and say, well, we're not going to fund that anymore. But first you have to make the case, Raymond, and this is part about exposing and making the case on what this industry looks like and how it performs and how people make money off of it.
I want to, before I let you go, I know you've endorsed Marco Rubio. I want to talk a little bit about the presidential political scene we're seeing. There also seems to be a lot of tension now between Donald Trump, the front runner in your party, and the Speaker of the House. They're exchanging volleys. I want you to tell me your thoughts on the establishment in the party sort of throwing the kitchen sink now at your front runner. Does this help in the long term, or does this so damage everyone in the party that it ensures the victory of Hillary Clinton?
So first off, I do support Marco Rubio. I look at the problems that we face as a country with our economy and with our security from the threats that come from overseas. And I think Marco Rubio is in the best position to grow our economy, put people back to work with better opportunity, and to keep us safe. But with that said, it's not my decision. It's not Paul Ryan's decision or Mitt Romney's decision. It is the American people's decision that voted in the Republican primary caucus on who their nominee will be. And they get to make that call. I don't think we should bludgeon anybody who might disagree with us, because the great American process of democracy gets to call the ball. And I think we're better off talking about issues and differences and policy than we are about going after people, because frankly, Donald Trump may be our nominee and we may have to rally around him. And I think everybody, Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney included, would say that Donald Trump, though we all have I have some concerns, and I know some others do as well, is no doubt every day of the week going to be better than Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. So we might have to work for him and work with him. So let's not go too far. Keep the kitchen sink attached to the counter and not thrown at, you know, one of our top candidates.
Yeah, no, Bill Bennett the other day was saying he cannot understand how, and he disagrees with Donald Trump, by the way. He was never a Trump supporter. But he says, I can't understand why a party that has been laboring for years to attract working class voters would attack the guy who's now attracting working class voters. I mean, just as an observer, that seems to make sense, right?
But you got to bring out legitimate concerns where, I mean, in the not too distant past, he was someone who supported late-term partial birth abortions, Raymond. Mm-hmm. He supports building tariffs and walls economically around the country. When you talk about how do you reform health care, he talks about, you know, taking away the lines, and he's been running for 8 months and hasn't had the curiosity to think through what's the right policy to fix that problem. And I think that's where the concern comes from. It's not that he's not bringing in new people, because he is, and I think that's a real benefit to our party. Mm-hmm. Our concern is you can make bold pronouncements, but what is the policy behind that pronouncement that's going to help you accomplish that goal? And we don't see a whole lot of meat on that bone. And I think that's what the concern is, in addition to the fact that he's had some pretty liberal positions. He has agreed with single payer. He has agreed with the stimulus bill. And because of that, there's some concern that he's not a true conservative. And we know that to fix the country, conservative principles and ideas will fix it. And that's the antidote to the Obama liberal progressive socialism that we've had for the last 7 years. It's not populism that Donald's been talking about. And that's the debate we're having.
Congressman Duffy, before I let you go, will you support whoever the nominee is, even if it's Donald Trump in your party?
Yeah, listen, I am not supporting Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. I guarantee you that, Raymond. So I'm going to go with our GOP winner.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Congressman Sean Duffy, thanks for joining us from the Cannon Rotunda. We will check in with you as this political season continues. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ray.
Up next, can the state force Catholic priests to reveal what they hear in the confessional? A major court decision was just handed down on this very issue, and the priest involved, Father Jeff BEYHE, will fill us in. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. It has been understood both in the civil and canon law that the seal of confession cannot be broken by a priest. But there was a time when, due to a court case, my next guest was to reveal what he'd learned in the confessional. He and the Diocese of Baton Rouge fought back, and this week a new ruling was handed down. To discuss it all is Father Jeff BEYHE from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Father, thanks for being with us.
Raymond, good to see you. Good to be with you.
Now, Father BEYHE, how was it that you were almost compelled by the state of Louisiana to violate the seal of confession?
Well, Raymond, it's I hope you understand that the ruling that we just received was a win, and it was a win for religious liberties, but it was very limited. We've still got issues we need to deal with. You know, in the allegations which came about in 2009, there is an allegation that a young girl said she came to confession and said that she revealed some inappropriate behavior with an adult parishioner. And the lawsuit says I had a duty to leave the confession and report that to the police. That's one of the things that we've been fighting in this. That obviously, it was interesting the other day in court, my attorney asked me, he said, what did they teach you about the seal of confession in the seminary? I said, Don, I didn't learn about the seal of confession in the seminary. I learned about that in second grade when Sister Teresa told me we were going to confession. And no one, we knew that. We knew that all of our lives. And certainly as a priest, we've all known that. And I think every Catholic in the world would recognize that they recognize that fact. And that's the very nature and the essence of the seal of confession, that it's between the penitent, the priest, and the ears and the heart of God. They
were going to compel you to break the seal, and you really had to fight it. It went to the Supreme Court of Louisiana, back down to this lower court. And tell us about the ruling this week. It's limited, though. It's very narrow, correct?
All right. Yeah, it is. And again, Judge Caldwell did a great job. We appreciate the fact that religious liberties were protected in the sense that he said, according to the Louisiana State Code, Article 609A1, in this position, the way the opposition were interpreting it, they thought I was a mandated reporter, you know, based on this Article 609A1, and the judge interpreted it differently. But now we still live under a ruling from the Louisiana Supreme Court that says it's up to the judge in civil court in Baton Rouge to convene a jury trial and let a jury decide what can and cannot be considered a confession. Well, when that ruling came down, Raymond, we went, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's unconstitutional. You know, we establish a constitution on freedom of religion when we allow a 12-person jury to, I mean, tell us anything, because who's going to be on the jury? Doesn't matter. We don't recognize a civil court as defined in doctrine for the Catholic Church. And no person of faith should recognize a civil court if we have freedom of religion. And one of the important things is, and I talk about this in terms of religious liberties, because, Raymond, I don't see myself as a target. I see myself as collateral damage, okay? I think people of faith need to be aware of the fact that if the seal of confession is not upheld throughout and made law of the land, then any person of faith who goes to their pastor would have to Mirandize them and say, no, look, before you tell me your deep, darkest secrets, you need to know that anything you can say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And any pastor, I don't care what religion you are, the civil law calls it sacred communication, they'll be compelled to reveal that in a court of law or suffer the consequences. And so those issues are not yet resolved. We're very glad that the interpretation for this very narrow scope was in favor of the seal of confession, but we have a ways to go, and it's a great challenge. You know, Raymond, I think it's no surprise to you Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, well, you have been. I mean, the good news here is
Raymond.
the court has delivered you from this onerous burden where they were going to force you, compel you to open up the seal, and that would have had an impact on priests throughout the state of Louisiana, and then one would imagine that this might have been moved to other states. So it's a good thing that it's fixed, but this is not a comprehensive ruling. It's not a national ruling by any means.
Well, first of all, it's not even a state ruling, Raymond. It's a local civil court judge. And if the seal of confession is not upheld in the United States, the home of the brave, the land of the free, then it has a universal effect on the church.
Right.
It absolutely does, and it has a universal effect on all religions. And obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know about the finality of this decision. This is in no way comprehensive,
right.
And now the seal is forever protected. I don't think that's what our ruling means. He simply, in this motion, did not interpret it the way the opposition did. And what is yet to come for that still has not completely freed the seal of confession, nor the state's interference in religious liberties and defining our own beliefs and doctrine.
Very good. Father Jeff BEYHE, thank you so much for being here.
It's a challenge, Raymond.
Well, that's all the time we have until next week. The show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com. Remember to get your copies of Will Wilder, The Relic of Perilous Falls. And don't miss our show next week. You will see something I have never done in almost 20 years of hosting this show. Author Dean Koontz will be here, and you should be too. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. Bye now.